Hi, so this was episode 30 of the Clive Barker podcast. I'm Ryan Danhauser, and also with me is Jose Leitao. This episode was a lot of fun. We talked about the whole year of 2012 in review. So anyway, we talked about 2012 in review, which was a lot of fun. There haven't been any books or movies that have come out in 2012. It's been a quiet year for that, but some really cool stuff happened during 2012. One of the things that kind of changed my life was Occupy Midian. And, of course, this podcast started officially in 2012, although I was planning it in 2011. So anyway, that's that. And the baby's coughing. So anyway, I hope... So this is the episode 30 of the Clive Barker podcast. Enjoy. So our topic, this is the Clive Barker podcast, episode 30, 2012 in review. So we'll be going through the stuff that happened with Clive Barker in 2002.
Yeah. So as usual, this is Ryan Danhauser and Jose Leitao. So hey guys, let's get this started.
So the first thing, number one, is Clive's health. He, and it all, the big scare kind of all started with a dentist appointment. And when was this? This was back in,
I think that was back in late 2011, I think.
Yeah. And so he had,
something like that.
They were doing some sort of dental work and something septic got into his bloodstream and he went into toxic shock and went in a coma.
It was a stream of bacteria that were released from the dental work. And at the time, he gave a comment into 22nd of January. He said, "Dear friends, I've had some medical issues that have recently forced me away from my beloved desk and into the hospital. But do not worry, I will be home soon and back to causing trouble. My apologies for being off the radar. All my love, Clive, XOXO." And then apparently it was a little more serious than we all assumed it at first, because he actually went into a coma for a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, and they downplayed it a little bit, because they don't want people to worry, but it was pretty terrible. I mean, it was pretty traumatic, and he could have easily have died.
Yeah, and then when he came back, he talked about being in a coma. He talked about having nightmares of black things flapping, black shadows surrounding him, and him pulling his tubes out in the hospital. And when he actually came to his senses back to the world, he found the doctor looking at him and saying, "If you do that again, that's the second time you do it. If you do that again, you're going to die."
Wow.
And he was like, "What's going on?" It was like, so it must have been a horrible situation. And he's still recovering from it to this day, because toxic shock is something that will leave terrible marks on your body.
Yeah.
In terms of sequels.
And of course, he didn't know, and he thought he would be able to keep his regular schedule of appearances. And in June, he went to the screening of Monster, the screening of the Cabal cut in Beverly Hills,
Los Angeles,
the New Beverly Cinema,
right.
And that you could tell that he really wasn't quite ready for that. I mean, he was kind of sitting and leaning the whole time, and his voice sounded kind of weak. And
you can find video on YouTube of the Beverly Hills screening, and you see Clive cracking jokes and eating
Twizzlers.
What was he eating?
Twizzlers.
He was eating Twizzlers. He was leaning up against Mark Miller of Seraphim. Yeah. And, you can tell he was still not doing very well at the time. So
yeah, and then, he was... and so after that, they kind of decided that he better not do any more appearances. And, and he was really hoping to do the Monster Mania, which was the New Jersey screening that I went to for... That was the New Jersey screening for the Cabal cut of Nightbreed, and Monster Mania is, of course, a big convention, and they were very, very upset when Clive canceled. But these things happen.
It's yeah. I mean, this is something that he's in a delicate situation right now. He's in a fragile state of of health, and also pushing himself beyond the limits that he probably should be doing with Aberrat. So he's still working on it actively from what we've heard, and not just publicly, but also and talking to other people who deal with him daily. He's been working on it pretty continuously.
And I think relating to Clive's health, he has not probably been getting this kind of sleep that he should. I mean, even before this thing happened. So it's better, if you're talking to him on Facebook or whatever, asking questions, it's better not to push him and, try to show that you're disappointed that such and such book didn't come out, or that he's not directing movies, or, just let him rest.
Yeah, I understand. There's a lot of people out there, people who are listening to this right now. They will probably do that, and they probably do follow Clive's updates and know more or less on a week in, week out what's going on with Clive and his books. But there are other people out there who still think that Clive is the same fresh-faced boy that shows up in the back of WeWorld. And because they just found out about Clive Barker, or they just know that he's a writer, but they don't know anything about him.
People are always, why isn't Clive directing movies again? It's like, well, it's been what, like 15 years since he's directed a movie? What was the date? No,
right?
It was 92, right? Was Lord of Illusions?
Lord of Illusions. Yeah. So it's been 20 years.
Yeah, it's been 20 years since he's directed a movie. It's probably not going to happen. Yeah, well,
it's and then we covered that on the episode where we talked about the movies that never happened and all that stuff. It's a difficult situation. It's a frustrating process. It's work by committee when you do a movie, and it takes a lot of time and effort, and it takes appeasing a lot of different people, like they usually say, Greeks and Trojans. I don't know, Greeks and Trojans, right? Yeah. It takes a lot of compromise to translate a story into a film. And ultimately, creative control sometimes flies out the window.
Well, and this isn't to say that there won't be any more Clive Barker movies. There will be adaptations and maybe movies that he writes, for sure, but he just isn't. He just probably is not going to direct anymore, and he's made a statement saying that. You never say never, but he's probably not going to happen. Yeah,
but there are still movies that are going to be done which have Clive Barker's contribution. Yeah. I mean, just this year in 2012, we did announce that Clive is going to work with Gladiators versus Zombies. He's going to write the story for the script. Yep. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not. It might be one of those. I honestly, I didn't think that Clive would get involved with this because it doesn't seem to be fitting with the usual originality of the movies that he decides to be involved with. I mean, this is a story that has been bouncing around for a while, and it doesn't have anything to
rewrite the script.
Yeah. So let's see what happens. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe if he can find time in his schedule of finishing Aberrat 4 and 5, 4 and 5. Yeah. I mean, if he doesn't decide to go for Aberrat 6, because you never know.
Yeah. Well, he originally was going to be 4, and it was called the Book of Hours, and it was divided into four parts. And then when he got about, I think after he had finished number 1, he kind of decided that it was going to be 5 parts, and he kind of tentatively told everybody, I've been thinking really hard about this, but this is going to have to be 5 books. And I think he's pretty much stuck to that for a lot of years now.
Yeah. Well, he actually came up with a name for Aberrat 4. It is going to be called The Price of Dreams. Yeah. He released this on December of 2012.
And it used to be The Dynasty of Dreamers, and it's changed since then.
I think I like that previous title better. I don't know, now that I'm looking at it.
Yeah, well, and it all depends. There was probably some kind of a story change that made that title more significant.
Sure. Yeah. Sure, The Price of Dreams. I still don't know what's going to happen. I'm still curious about where Aberrat is going to go ultimately with the battle between night and day and what is the Comexo kid going to do? I still think the Comexo kid is going to have a lot of importance in the story.
Oh, yeah. Well, have you finished number 3?
Oh man, I'm sorry to say I haven't finished it yet.
Yeah.
I've had other things
going to be answered.
I'm trying to put Aberrat in the back burner until there's at least another one, because I know I'm just going to go through Aberrat 3 like in a matter of days, and then I'm going to be like, well, now I have to wait.
Yeah.
I don't know how long for Aberrat 4.
It's true.
So ultimately, my plan is to have all 5 books, hopefully when they all come out, and then just read them like in a month or something.
I do that anyway. I mean, I read them when they come out, and then I read the entire series, but when the new one's going to come out.
Oh gosh, yeah, but I'm not going to read Aberrat 1, 2, and 3 again.
Well, that's true. I mean, when 3 came out, reading 1 and 2 wasn't so daunting a process, but 3 is big. So when 4 comes out, reading 1, 2, and 3, and then 4 is probably going to be a pretty big undertaking.
Yeah, and you know that 3 is already pretty. It's pretty big.
3 is pretty
you can kill someone with that book.
Yeah, and I'm sure that 4 is probably going to even be the same or bigger.
Yeah, well, the good thing is that from what I've heard, Clive is working on 4 and 5, kind of a back-to-back thing, right? I mean, so he's doing his best to finish everything on time and get those things out there, because I think that Clive might see Aberrat as kind of Lord of the Rings was for Tolkien. So, I mean, I think he thinks that this is one of his transgenerational works. Yeah. One of his, that transversally appeals to all segments of his readers.
And I think he certainly thinks it's the most important project that he's working on right now. This
I mean,
Aberrat are probably his favorite things that he's done.
Because he mixed several kinds of things into this. He mixed like his painting and his storytelling.
I mean, this and Magica are probably his most important. To him, the most important things that he's done.
Sure. For me personally, it's Magica, but I understand that Aberrat is a tremendous undertaking in terms of creativity and art and development. It's probably the thing he's committed a lot of years of his life to.
Oh
so.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and then I think, was it number 2, Aberrat 2? I think that they threw it all out and started over again at one point.
Yes, once he did do that. He has a tendency to read aloud the text of his books to see how they sound like. And then once he did a reading of his manuscript for Aberrat 2, and he wasn't happy with it. And that's when he threw it all away and started over again and did it in I don't want to be inaccurate. I think he did it in a year and a half or something. And he did a new draft of Aberrat 2. So, and he says it was completely different. A lot of things were completely different. So, I guess we'll never know what was in that, what was in that original draft of Aberrat 2.
And one thing you can tell, I mean, for me, one thing that it seemed like it was going in one direction and then suddenly it changed is Princess Boa. I think in the first book she was sort of painted as this heroine that was going to, when she comes back again, that she'll be there to save everyone, and you find out later that that's not the case.
Not having read the third book all the way to the end, so what I can say is from the first book, I got the impression Princess Boa was going to be this almost angelical presence that of someone who was long gone, but maybe her spirit would remain inside Candy. Then in the second one, I started to get this idea that Princess Boa is actually still inside Candy somehow and is going to make a comeback. Yeah. And then on the third one, I haven't finished reading it yet, but I'm guessing that she's becoming more of a prominent presence in the story.
Without spoiling anything, definitely, and I won't get into it, but
I really did not think after reading the first one that Princess Boa would ever come back. I thought that she was she's dead, that was finality, and that would be the soul of her would be reincarnated into Candy.
Yeah, that was kind of the impression that I had too.
And then, of course, there are the sisters, the Sisters of the 25th Hour. What are they called?
Phantomaya.
The Phantomaya, yeah. That somehow they were responsible for preserving Princess Boa's soul
inside of Candy
by visiting Candy Quackenbush's parents in Stormy Night or something. Yeah, from what I recall. So yeah, I'm really looking forward one day to being able to read the whole thing from beginning to end. It's probably going to be really, really entertaining, and I will feel, as a Clive Barker fan, I think I will feel a certain finality and conclusion. I'll feel really happy and relieved when Aberrat is finished.
Yeah. I don't recommend people do that with the books of the art.
What do you mean?
Don't wait until book 3 comes out before you read the other 2.
Oh, yeah, no. The books of the art are actually pretty self-contained, in my opinion. Not just the first one, but the second one, too, like Everville. I was perfectly happy if there had been no Everville just with the Great and Secret Show. I mean, it's true that from one book to the other, there are characters who we did think that they had died. Yeah. I'm not trying to say anything, and they do come back.
Yeah, definitely.
In some ways, I was disappointed. In other ways, I was happy to see some characters return. And in the way that they return, I mean, it was not a gratuitous thing like, oh, yeah, well, this guy was dead, now he just got better. No, actually, there are explanations, and there are, a purpose for.
And it's the same with. You thought? I thought for sure that Chris, what's his name in Aberrat, was dead. Christopher Carrion.
Oh yeah, and of course, then we have that trailer done by Mark Miller and what was the special effects guy?
Stephen Imhoff.
Stephen Imhoff, yeah. They did that trailer. Yeah, it was surprising to me. It was very surprising. It was interesting to see a book trailer for Aberrat 3. I mean, I had seen the previous book trailer for a Clive Barker book that I had seen was Mr. Begone. Yeah. That was actually released by HarperCollins.
Yeah.
So,
and actually, one comment somebody put on Facebook on the Clive Barker Spiral of Friends group. She said, I wonder why doesn't everybody know that Everville is the sequel to The Great and Secret Show? And that sort of caught me off guard. I'm like, really? Is that a thing that, people buy that and just think that that's just a Clive Barker book that they could just read?
I guess that is a testament to how much of a standalone book it can be.
Yeah.
Because he does open up with the beginning of Everville in the time of the frontier exploration. Right. I mean, maybe I'm not using the right thing, but the time of the pioneers,
right.
I think.
Yeah, the Oregon Trail and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it does open up in a way that introduces you to the characters, the main characters of the book. So there is a certain baggage that you should know from the Great and Secret Show. But
and like Joe Beth and Tommy Ray, or have a place. And one really cool thing is the detective Harry D'Amour, was briefly introduced in the Great and Secret Show, but he has a big part in Everville.
He does, and there's Tesla, there's Grillo, and
the ape. What is his name? Raoul. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because that's my brother's name. So, yeah, that was funny. So anyway,
so we were talking about Clive's health. The only other thing that there was Scarefest in Kentucky that he had to cancel also. So our next one was Mad Monster Party, Cabal Cut, and Occupy Midian. So you and I kind of ended up being right in the middle of the start of this whole thing.
Yes, we did.
It was kind of cool, fortuitous turn of events, I think, for us. But, I really, really wanted to see, because I felt, we had started this podcast, and I thought, wouldn't it be something to go see the extra footage from Nightbreed? Because we'd heard that there was going to be another screening, what everyone assumed was going to be this Horror Hound, footage. And I had missed it 2 years ago or whatever, or 3 years ago in 2009 when they did the Horror Hound screening. And I thought, no, I'm not going to miss that again. This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I want to go see it, and then we can report about it on the podcast. And then as time was going by and the event was getting closer, we were getting more details about what this really was. And it was something not only totally different from the Horror Hound screening, but better.
Yes, because at the Horror Hound screening, you did tell me, or was it you? I think it was either you or I read about this, or Mark Miller said in an interview that there were actually people who walked out on it because it was too difficult to see because they had still left in. They just did a screening of the rough work print VHS tape, and what the VHS tape had was a transfer of the
and
the
they
film
may have transferred it to a DVD, but it was just a straight transfer without editing or anything. Yeah,
but the problem is that they had left in the footage of the reeler in tapes, and the little things that go like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then picture start and all that
lots of stuff with
so
no
it was
sound.
Lots of stuff with no sound, and then stuff that was just went on and on and on, like the massacre scenes. They were all clumped together and did in a kind of a haphazard way, and there were people who died twice in the tape. So I guess but since then, I mean, thanks to Russell Charrington, who took it upon himself to
and it was at this point, I was texting with Mark talking about this upcoming event and congratulating him on the on this Nightbreed thing, and he said, no, really, we should be thanking Russell Charrington. And I was like, well, who's that? And so we kind of learned more about who Russell is and how he took this on himself, as a friend of Clive Barker and, sort of an unofficial part of their company, to edit together the Cabal cut from using a mixture of the theatrical DVD and for those of you that don't know already, the mixture of the theatrical DVD and all of this rough VHS work print footage that they found.
Yeah, from 2 different tapes. Russell Charrington was also, for those people out there who usually visit Revelations, if you remember, sometimes Phil and Sarah would put up videos of Clive Barker doing a walkthrough of his exhibits, painting exhibits. And the person who did that, like twice, was Russell Charrington behind the camera. He was like recording Clive in the gallery, and he was going like, Burt Green Gallery, for example. Clive is just introducing the paintings and talking about the paintings, and then he turns to the camera. Well, you know that, right, Russell? So it was Russell Charrington behind the camera doing those walkthrough videos of Clive Barker talking about his paintings. So apparently he was already involved in doing stuff for Clive, and we just didn't know who he was.
Yeah, he was.
But yeah, that was great.
Behind the scenes, I guess, literally.
And Facebook Occupy Midian got started because of you, because you took the time to go to the screening, and then you came back and you talked to me and Roger. And you were like, hey, this was awesome, it was amazing. And, and Bobby said, Occupy Midian. And we're like, hey, let's get it started on Facebook.
Well, it was interesting because I had bought a VIP pass, which meant that I could get in on Friday at 4 o'clock when everybody else could get in at 5 o'clock. So I was waiting for 4 o'clock to come. And then the first thing I did is I made a beeline over to Ann Bobby and Craig Sheffer. And I thought, I'm going to talk to them first because I bet there's going to be big lines to see them. And I had my little field recorder, which didn't have the best, I didn't have it set up the best, but I had a little field recorder and I did an interview with them. And they sort of together came up with this name, Occupy Midian. Craig Sheffer had said, if they don't let this DVD come out, then there's going to be a movement called Occupy Morgan Creek. And Ann Bobby said, Occupy Midian, so then from there, she repeated it, when she was meeting with Mark and Russell that night at the bar. And then she said it out loud at the screening. And I thought, oh boy, if we don't do something with this, somebody else is. And I think our original thought, was to buy the domain name.
Yes, but, that was surprising to find that you were still at the hotel, and so was Russell. Already, the domain had been bought, and was bought by Russell.
And it was good that we found out that Russell had bought it, because our thinking was, we want to do this because somebody else could do it and just sit on it, or buy it and, cyber squat, or, not, or try to sell it back to them. And we wanted this to be as official as possible. And we just wanted to help. So, the three of us, we talked about it and decided to put up the Facebook group first, right? And Roger got on that right away.
Yeah, that was a great night. And then we added all our friends to the groups, and by the next day we already had like over 200 people.
And it sort of started exponentially growing without our help.
Geez, yeah. And then when the petition went up, we got like 1,000 signatures in like couple of weeks or something.
And the petition, we should talk a little bit about how that got started too, because that was you had been talking with Phil and Sarah about the old petition that had 900 signatures, and they were taking, they were making their own thing where they were pasting people's comments on the wall of their website. And and you had asked them about bringing that back, and they had told you, why don't you start a whole new one, right, or something like that?
Yeah. They said something. I can actually quote the direct thing from you. Oh wow! So let me see. In 11 days. Oh, I found an email where I was talking to Phil and explaining how the petition was evolving. And it says here that in 11 days, we reached 930 signatures and counting.
That's
wow.
more than the other one got in a year, and we got that in 11 days.
Yeah. In 3 years. The other petition had been up for 3 years because the tapes were found in 2008 or 2007.
And the Horror Hound screening was in 2009.
Right. Okay.
Petition,
well,
I think, was sort of done around that Horror Hound screening.
So it was 3 years, yeah. So for 3 years... that petition, which had nothing to do with Phil and Sarah, had gotten 900 signatures, and we got that in 11 days. Yeah. So, well, about the petition, he did say like, why don't you start a new one? So I was like, okay. So I talked to you guys, and we came up with a text, and we put it up on Facebook on the group, and even though I was the one who put it up. Like and I didn't sign it right away. And so after posting it on the group, when I went to sign it, there were already like 10 signatures in the petition.
Yeah,
it was like in a matter of minutes.
You actually went to sign it. That's amazing.
Yeah,
and I had like, I think I had done something and I came back and to sign it, and I was like number 40. I'm like, man, why can't you and I and Roger be 1, 2, and 3? I don't know.
I was just a rush of the moment. I just thought, hey, it's done. Let's put it up. And then it was like, oh, I didn't sign it. Oh, shucks. Let me sign it. It was, I'm number 10 already. Yeah. So it was like, that's great. I was happy because that thing was gathering signatures like, I don't know, geez, I can't even find an analogy that would, it was like a Zerg rush on the petition.
Well, and I think at that point it wasn't really. Because so Mad Monster Party had screened the movie, and they had said somebody from Morgan Creek was there at the screening, and I think it was probably Michael Plumides.
Yeah, he said he was responsible for doing that first screening of the VHS tape.
And he was the guy that the people at Mad Monster Party had negotiated with to allow this screening to happen. And I think so a combination of the work that Russell did and then, this negotiating to get this screening done and the popularity that we brought to it through the Facebook group and the petition, it actually became a world tour of screening this movie instead of just a few.
It totally did. It went from the UK to the United States to... to Scotland, to Germany, Barcelona, Vienna of Austria, and
Mexico City.
Even Mexico. Yeah. So, geez, it was like in 2012 there were starting at 24th of March and ending at the 15th of December. There were, I think, 19 or 20 different screenings around the world.
And Russell,
most of them in the United
Russell
Kingdom.
took that upon himself. He went to every single one. Mark went to some of them, but Russell went to every single one. And at every screening, he would see who he could get from Nightbreed to come and help introduce it and do a Q&A panel at the end.
Yeah. And, I created a few events for it. You created most of them in the Facebook group, inviting all the people that were there. Some people were like, "Hey, why are you inviting me? I'm in
I live in Oregon,
Texas,
or whatever. Why are you inviting me to something in Germany?"
But it was great. I mean, it was just a way of gathering so many people who love the movie, and then of course, it's a testament to how faithful and loyal the fans are to the movie. Because I don't think there was any screening where it was like a disappointment. In fact, a lot of these screenings were sold out events.
Yeah.
And Russell would post some pictures sometimes of people waiting outside to come in. He would post pictures of fans who dressed up like like Nightbreed. I mean, there was this one guy who sticks out. He was dressed up as Kinski. He had an amazing. It was in Mexico at the Morbid.
That was in Mexico.
It was just amazing to see this guy. He had a makeup of Kinski on and looked just really, really amazing. Of course, there were like other people, like a kind of a chubby Decker.
Yeah. That was at Monster Mania in New Jersey. I went to that one, and that was funny. And that was a father and son team that were like Decker and Peliquin. And then every day they turned into different. They did a different father and son costume. So there was a couple of Cenobites that they did at one point.
Oh man, I'm thinking about the chubby Peliquin. He was hitting the man flash a little. So it was fun. But still really, really amazing work and very commendable as fans to do that. It's just so amazing that they would take the time to dress up like that.
Yeah, that was cool.
It was pretty awesome. And, like 20 screenings in 2012 and still going because now there's one screening for the 22nd of February in So that's the first one of 2012. Yeah. There might be another one in the United States. Let's wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, we can't expect there to be 20 again. But you never know. I mean, I think once there's more details about the release date for the movie, they might start slowing down them. But that's just speculation. I have no idea.
Yeah, I would really like to know more. We should try to get Russell or Mark to come back to the podcast, or maybe just to do some kind of like statement on Occupy Midian. Because I'm really interested in knowing. The last news that we got about the Cabal cut was that it was like in the 7th different iteration that they had done. They've been like working on it and cutting it here and there, trimming it, with Clive Barker's feedback. And
I think, aside from negotiating with Morgan Creek and all of that, which is, something that's going to be something Russell's going to have to deal with. But aside from all of that, probably the biggest pivotal moment for this is going to be, at what point do they find the footage, the original footage, not the work print, or do they decide to give up on finding that footage and go with what they have already?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are people who are asking. Even today, they asked in the wall of Occupy Midian. They were like, "So, is this going to be? When is this going to be released in DVD or Blu-ray?" It's like, how much does it cost to get this on DVD? And like people asking, why don't you put this on iTunes so we can download it and pay something?
It's like it's a little early for those questions, unfortunately. I mean, I wish we knew the answers, but we don't.
I wish I could get the Cabal cut on a DVD. I mean, that's about it.
Yeah.
But it's still not restored. Yeah. I mean, the BFI, the British Film Institute, is interested in helping Russell Charrington restore the movie.
Yeah, they were going to do the tape baking on the with the VHS tapes to get the purest quality off of. But you commit the money to that. They probably don't want to commit the money to that until they know for sure that it's a lost cause trying to find the movie elements.
Sure. So I don't know what's going on. Michael Plummetis, he's creative writer and consultant for Morgan Creek, and he's been putting public things on his Facebook feed One of them he put out today, talking about how he's working for Clive Barker, and I quote, he's from Charlotte, North Carolina, which was where the first screening was done. Says here, in my best Slim Pickens impersonation, I exclaimed, blank on you, I'm working for Clive Barker. Of course, obviously, where it's blank, it's like a word that starts with P and ends in S. But that was an hour ago on Facebook. So, and he's told me that he's been working on Nightbreed materials all through this summer, and that he's the one working also in the pitch for a Nightbreed TV series.
And they're talking about a comic book and stuff. I think...
Yeah, can you imagine? Reboot of the comic book? Like, there's already a comic book for Hellraiser. Why can't there be a comic book for Nightbreed,
I'm sure the audience... Well, we've got, at this point, 12,658 signatures on the petition. So I'm sure that there's an audience there for that comic book as well.
I'm pretty sure. Hey, what issue is Hellraiser Comic on?
It stopped at 19, and then they started a mini-series of 3 called The Road Below that kind of goes into more detail about how Kirsty became the Kirsty Pinhead. And then they're going to start another series, and I forget what that is called, but I think the numbers are going to start over.
So there you go. Already it's approaching the same number of comics that came out in the 90s. So, of course.
Yeah, I would like to see it keep going, in the same... along the same numbering system, but...
Yeah. Well, the thing about comics nowadays is that, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, you used to Marvel and DC comics coming out regularly every month.
Yeah, and it's like, I've got number 652 of X-Men or whatever. Yeah.
And nowadays, smaller publishing companies, they might not release the comics on a regular scale. Like, it's not going to be like every month on the 15th or something you're going to get a new comic. Sometimes it might take them a little while. There are distribution things that they, Diamond. Sometimes it takes a little while for comics to come out. They might take like a month and a half to come out. They might take 2 months to come out. So it's not as regular as it should be.
But now there's like usually back then it wasn't like this, but now there's like whole companies that just do adaptations of TV shows and movies. And then continue the stories on for those. Like, who would have thought there would be, like, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the comic book, or,
Transformers, the comic book.
Or He-Man.
IDW.
Yeah, exactly,
He-Man.
like IDW. It
He-Man,
used to be Dark Horse would do any... If there's ever anything like that, then it would be Dark Horse, and it's not like that anymore.
Yeah. Gosh, I had He-Man comics when I was watching the cartoon.
Yeah.
So... Well,
there were little comic books that came with the figures.
I actually had like comic books that I used to buy, but they didn't come with the figures. They were actually comic books that came out in the late 80s.
The stories, stories that came with the figures were totally different from what the cartoon was like. So for me, as a little kid, that cartoon was a huge letdown. Like, to make He-Man like a Superman type of a guy with an alternate identity and stuff was... That was never in their stories on there, that they came with.
I'm not trying to open up a whole can of worms, but He-Man was not supposed to be He-Man. It was supposed to be a Conan the Barbarian cartoon to begin with, right? Oh,
really?
Yeah, it was supposed to be a Conan the Barbarian cartoon, but then they couldn't get the legalese things straightened out, so they had to change it into a completely original character. It was done by Filmation. Filmation was a really small company at the time. But I'm not going to, get into that.
So, anyway, we're talking about Occupy Midian.
Yeah. And about Nightbreed, just want to say this. It's like, I personally haven't seen the movie yet, the Cabal cut. I know that you have seen it like 3 times already.
Yeah.
You told me pretty much all there is to know about the movie, so I'm really, excited about it. And, if we can get another screening to happen sometime this year in like Los Angeles or the Bay Area, I'm definitely going to be there. But if not, then I guess the only time I'm going to see it is probably when it reaches DVD or Blu-ray.
Yeah, and you know,
So
and there was one guy on the wall recently that said like, "Oh, it should be on DVD. Some of us don't have a Blu-ray player," and I'm thinking, you know, that's.
Well, he's got kind of a point.
Well, but, I mean, I flew across the country twice to see this movie, so I wouldn't. If it were me, I wouldn't let something like that stop me.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't think if it comes out in Blu-ray that he's not going to buy it. He's probably going to find a way to see it, even if it's at a friend's house or something.
Or there'll be a download version
on iTunes or something like that. Yeah, I was just finding out a while ago that Twin Peaks is on iTunes in 1080p, and there is no Blu-ray of Twin Peaks, but there is HD on iTunes.
Oh, wow.
So that's right there.
Man, those TV shows will hog up a lot of hard drive space, though, if you download them from iTunes. Because it's one season of a series will be like 50 gigabytes.
Sure, yeah, if it's 1080, yeah. Geez, I mean, but so yeah, I mean, who knows? There might be. I'm guessing that Morgan Creek, whenever they do this, and I'm not sure who's going to be the distributor, if it's going to be Warner, because it's the one that's distributing the movie right now on DVD, Burned by Demand on Amazon. Right now, if you want to buy Nightbreed, you can buy the theatrical version on Warner's home video DVD-R Burned by Demand.
If you don't have it, you might as well get that, but I don't know, I mean... This is the first time ever when I said think it's probably okay to wait for the director's cut.
In a perfect world, the Cabal cut would become the Nightbreed movie, and the theatrical version would, dwindle away. But of course, with the amount of versions of that, with the amount of theatrical versions out there in VHS and DVD, of course, that's not going to happen.
For 20 years, everybody's been watching the theatrical version.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that there might be very few DVDs and VHS tapes now out there for Nightbreed.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not a very commercial hit to begin with, and there weren't like DVD versions of it in Europe, except for 2 or 3 countries that had horrible editions, like the Italian Cabal DVD.
Right.
God, that one's horrible. That one is like a cheap pan and scan full of it's like when you point a camera at a cinema screen and, you see all the I can't explain it, but it's full of scratches and dots and stuff like that. And it's got these colors are muted, and then it's dubbed in Italian, which we've covered that on one of the episodes once. Like the Pelican going like, Mamma Mia. No, I'm not. I'm actually just kidding. But yeah, it's funny to see Cabal in Italian.
Yeah.
I mean, I scratch a little of the Italian language, and so yeah, I've seen that DVD. It's funny. It's funny. I'll just say that. And then there's like a Swedish it's not a Swedish. It's a version in DVD from the Netherlands, I think. I think so, or is it Sweden? I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, and the movie was made in England, and they never got a Region 2 version of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you go for the Hellraisers, I mean, geez, how many Hellraisers have not come out in England?
Yeah, it's weird, but they're the later ones, I think, right? Didn't they get 1, 2, and 3?
Well, for example, in Portugal, we got Hellraiser 1, 2 came out in VHS. Then 3 never came out in any form. Then 4 came out in DVD.
Really?
No, it came out in VHS.
Oh, wow.
And then 5, it came out in VHS as well. And then 6 came out in DVD just for rent.
Oh.
And it's strange. It's like some of these movies, they come out, others don't. Then some just came out in VHS. They never came out in DVD. Others came out in DVD. Like the worst ones came out in every shape and form.
Yeah.
And it's like amazing. But in the UK, I think they just got the Hellraiser 3 DVD like a couple of years ago or something like that.
And they should pay you to take Hellraiser Revelations.
Yeah, they should do that. They should absolutely do that. And that thing is like, it's downloadable in HD. It's like available in Blu-ray. And it's like, Jesus Christ, it's available on Blu-ray, but then you don't have a Blu-ray Court of Illusions.
Yeah.
Or Nightbreed.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is so unfair. Having Hellraiser Revelations on Blu-ray it offends me more than having Beverly Hills Chihuahua 2 in Blu-ray.
Well, I mean, it was because it didn't have a theatrical release, so that's all they got was video, so they did it on every format that there is.
Yeah. Didn't it get like a theatrical release just in like one theater or something like that? I think it did.
I don't know. I hadn't heard that.
I think it might have had.
If it did, it was
heard...
probably simultaneous with the or probably just only shortly before it was on, Yeah.
Probably they just, sent a text to the director like 1 hour before the theatrical premiere, said, "Hey, be at this theater at this time. We got a surprise for you." And then he just shows up. "Oh, they're playing my movie." No, I'm just kidding. But I wish it was that.
If it did show in a theater, it was probably based on some contract requirement.
Yeah. Here, it wasn't just Nightbreed that got new life breathed into it. It was also Weave World, right? I mean, it was the 25th anniversary of Weave World. Yeah, so that was announced in 2012. And it was supposed to come out in 2012, but there were some delays, and it got sort of pushed over into this year. Supposedly it's shipping now, but I still haven't seen mine. Yeah, we talked about that on the last episode. I got this email from the mailing list of the company doing it. And they were saying that it's going to ship right now. So hopefully you'll be getting that soon, and me, and then we can review the 25th anniversary book of Weave World, which is one of my favorite Clive Barker books. When we get to Weave World, that'll be nice to read that one rather than the one that we already have, probably. I'm actually looking forward to rereading Weave World. Too. I've read it twice. I'm actually holding it right now. Got it right here, Weave World. I have the paperback from Fontana. It's got a beautiful cover. And the other day, did you see that there was a picture that Clive Barker posted on Facebook of himself, like smoking a cigar, sitting on a carpet that looks like the carpet from the cover? Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah. That was amazing. So what's next? I guess we kind of covered Occupy Midian. It's still going strong. We're hoping that the movie's going to come out this year. But there's no way to know that for sure. And so the next thing is the Odyssey 2 project. So this is we've talked about this in a few of our episodes, but there's a story called They're Mad They Are, and Clive Barker started it out by writing the first chapter, and every other person would do a submission for a 400-word chapter of the book, and then they pick the best one. And there are 8 chapters, and the last chapter, I think, was 800 words instead of 400. Yeah, I read the story. Me too. Actually, I was talking to you just before we started the conversation. And can I give my review of it? Yeah. All right. So, okay, I read the first chapter, Clive Barker's chapter. It's interesting. It's about this guy who is riding a train, and there's this other guy who starts getting a seizure, and he falls down, and he helps him, puts something in his mouth, and then when the guy just gets up, walks away. "Oh, I'm fine. Okay." And when he comes home, he finds out that there's a little vomit stain on his trousers, and that's where it cuts off. After this point, they picked several winning chapters, and they had runner-ups for each chapter. I think it was Clive Barker who picked these out. And then I was like, okay, first chapter, it talks about this guy looking at the vomit stain, finding out that he takes his trousers off to wash it, and then he finds out that there's this rash that appeared on his leg, and it's like spreading, and it's got these iridescent scales and stuff. Right, where they go with this is that they turn it into kind of a interdimensional monster trying to cross into our world, like kind of it's an infection that it's like a development of this creature that's going to grow up inside him, and this being is the progeny of another race of people, or should I say creatures, from another dimension. So the thing is, these creatures can affect the reality of our world with their words or their minds. So words or thoughts, they can like tune. They actually use the word tuning, which kind of reminded me a lot of Dark City. And
it makes me think of Phantasm, where they use the tuning forks, to open up that portal to the other world.
Oh yeah. It reminded me a lot of Dark City because they're talking about extra-dimensional creatures who come into our world. They have to take humans as host bodies, and
because their bodies
they're strange.
can't handle our living in our world.
Yeah, and they can tune with their thoughts. They can change reality. And that reminded me just terribly of Dark City and the others, the strangers, that stuff. So I think, and then there were a few things that threw me out of the story. Like some chapters are good, other chapters are kind of hard to read, especially the last chapter. And then there are a few typos in there, a few spelling mistakes. And then, of course, because this is written by different people, in one chapter they refer to this creature growing inside Paul, which is our protagonist, as she. Right. And then another chapter calls it an it.
And then the progeny, and my progeny, and the progeny, and they didn't want to give it even any kind of a pronoun at all.
Talshen, yeah. And so this Talshen, this creature's Talshen, it's the progeny of Lysana.
Yeah. And Lysana is like the bad guy one, and Maya is the good guy one.
Yeah, Maya is her sister, and then in another chapter they call Maya sister progeny of Lysana, which it just gets a little confusing after a while. But anyway, this creature is supposed to be Lysana's effort to, destroy the human race. Because some people some of her people did the shawl, I think. Yeah. They were fascinated by the human race, and others were like, let's cross over into their world, live among them. And then others were like, these guys, let's just destroy them. So and Lysana is one of the. We never really understand why they want to destroy the human race, but that's the problem with being something that has a word limit, and it was written by different people. It's just that sometimes people pull the story in one direction, then the next chapter pulls the story in a different direction.
And there was not really much explanation about this guy that had a seizure and puked on him. Like, what happened to him? How did he end up?
Well, I think what they do mention in one of the chapters is that Lysana had been trying to infect some humans with her progeny Talshen.
What happened couldn't take hold, or
it wouldn't take hold, it wouldn't stick, and what they would do is it would cause them extreme pain, suffering, and agony, and they would have a seizure and expel whatever was in their bodies that belonged to Talshen. It just so happened that one of the puke stains landed on Paul's trousers and infected him right in the crotch. So. And then, of course, Maya is this. She's trying to stop this because she knows Lysana is trying to destroy the human race. So she abducts Paul when she finds out that he's infected, gives him some shots of this substance called proxetol. But because Talshen has become this mutated, different, abnormal progeny, and that poison does not work on him. And he actually starts to take hold of Paul. This change it reminds me of, the usual changes that, characters in Clive Barker stories go through, where their flesh is changing. It's changing into something, kind of miraculous and monstrous at the same time. He develops these pouches on his back. These pouches pop and tentacles come out. And that's when Maya, she sees that, okay, proxetol isn't working. It's time to get out the blade and start hacking, because this guy is going to get possessed by
And for
this
me,
creature.
this is probably the worst chapter of the whole.
Yeah, and she just starts hacking, cuts off a tentacle, and then, all right, this Talshen is trying to merge his mind with Paul, and he goes just go to sleep and I'll do whatever it takes for us to survive. And eventually what happens is this thing comes out of Paul like the Thing, in Carpenter's movie. It pushes out a couple of tentacles, rips the ceiling, goes out of his body, and just leaves scraps of, a carcass of Paul
he's
behind.
In little pieces.
Yeah, he's in little pieces. There's just a carcass left.
And that person left the chapter like that he was, dead and in all these pieces on the floor.
Yeah, and in the previous chapter, Maya was explaining to him that Talshen was trying to merge with his body, and his body would be changed from within, and he would become Talshin.
Yeah.
That he was going to become. And I thought, well, then he's done for, because his mind is being taken over. His mind actually disappears because Talshin pushes his mind away, turns it into nothing, takes over his body. And then in the next chapter, he is left as scraps of meat on the floor, and then she just, of course, she's a Dishal. She can change reality with spells and, pronunciation. So she just speaks out this spell, and she makes his body become whole again. I don't really, it just seemed like a way to, hey, you killed him, but I'm going to bring him back.
It reminds me of those Pirates of the Caribbean movie. How many times do all those people have to die and come back to life again?
I've only seen the first two. And then it's like, okay, now Paul is back together again. Talshin is out there. There's like horns and people screaming outside. The monster is loose. And it's like it's trying to take over the world. And for some reason, he can fly now.
Yeah, it was like him dying and coming back to life. He got to see and learn the entire history of their race. And so he learned all of their magic and...
Yeah, he's got this psychic tether that went into Talshin, and then by proxy also went into the mind of Lysana, who apparently died in the previous episode for some reason. I didn't really understand why she died. She dies when her progeny is born. And then he gets this knowledge of how to do the
Dishol magic.
The spell thing, the Dishol magic, He can speak or think, and then he just... and then in a twist of, giant proportions, which I didn't really understand, he looks at Maya and thinks, oh, she brought me back to life. She's a Dishol. She's really dangerous for this world. I'm just going to kill her.
And he just disintegrated her or something. And...
just disintegrated her with his Dishol magic, newly acquired powers. Then he flies out, and he's flying over the city. He's seeing the monster, who apparently is growing to big proportions, and he's like throwing tentacles into everybody, trying to infect them with little copies of himself. And then he's going around just killing all the people that he infected. And then it's where it becomes really confusing in the last chapter, because then he tries to destroy Talshin. He fails because his magic doesn't work with him.
Blocks him.
Then what he does is he just creates a rift in space, puts him into Earth's outer orbit, and Talshin dies. And I was like, okay, well, all right, sure. I understand that. I mean, it just felt like
there was
a little forced.
Yeah.
It was like the story literally ends in 5 or 6 lines there.
And there was a little scene where he confronted Talshin, and it said Talshin only had one tentacle left because Maya had cut all the other ones off. Like, well, when did that happen?
Yeah.
I mean, was that in between the chapters that we read somewhere?
Yeah, I know. It's like, I think it might have been in the hacking scene when she cuts off some tentacles from him when he's still transforming. Because he does say that she started hacking and she cuts at least one tentacle.
Yeah.
Is described as being hacked out. So, but yeah, it's an interesting story. It's kind of small. I think that Clive Barker's opening chapter is good. Yeah. There are some good chapters in there, but then it's like the whole story in itself, the sum of its parts does not create a larger thing. It's just like a pile of chapters. Yeah. And then the guy who wrote the last chapter even left it a little open, because then he goes like, okay, and then Paul throws Talshin into outer Earth's orbit, and then Talshin dies looking at the Earth. He's like, oh no, and he just dies. And then he thinks, well, I've saved the world. I've destroyed all the people that Talshin infected, but I'm still a guy who knows Dishol magic, so I don't know what to do. Okay, I guess I'll just subtract myself from this world and go into their world, and then I'll try to stop this from ever happening again. So we don't really understand. Then I guess he just creates a rift and goes into the world of the Dishol.
I thought he wanted to find the original rift that they came through on. But,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, if their bodies can't survive in our world, then it probably would be work vice versa, right? That his body wouldn't be able to survive in their world either.
Yeah, but for some reason he became Superman, so he can fly and everything. He's got a new body. But I think it was just strange. It's a strange story. It's a little uneven. It's got a few spelling mistakes and typos. There are places where Talshin is referred to as an she, then is referred to as an it. There are things which change from chapter to chapter, things we don't really understand how that happened, like you said, like the tentacles. And, okay, it was a nice try. You know, it's a project that, the nature of this project is to create something out of a mishmash of things. There are other chapters which were runner-ups for each one of these chapters. So, here's the thing. What people can do is, if they want to, if they don't like one chapter that they read, I guess they can go to the runner-up and see if they like that chapter better. The only problem is there is no continuation from that runner-up chapter.
You still have to read the original story and then read the runner-up chapter, and then go back to the original story and read that runner-up chapter. Yeah,
because the runner-up chapters are dead ends, all of them. They never got any continuation out of that. So it's just a way of knowing what could have happened if they had chose that particular chapter at that point. But, you know, so it was a nice effort. But ultimately, I prefer to read something that's written by Clive Barker from beginning to end.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it was a fun idea.
It was. And they have some really good art there.
Oh, yeah. And I'll be looking forward to seeing. They haven't picked the art for Chapter 8 yet, the final chapter. So we'll be looking forward to seeing that.
There's one particular piece of art in Odyssey 2, which I really, really enjoyed, which is the one for Chapter 7, called A Man Reborn. Is this piece of art that represents Talshin bursting out of Paul's body, and it's pretty good. It's pretty cool. It reminds me of Richard Kirk's artwork for Weave World. Actually, it's a black and white drawing. So really cool.
I know which one you're talking about. That is nice. Yep. So that's that one. The next thing is just Clive Barker's new presence on social media, and I think that we have Alex Gasbrow to thank for that. He's been really helping out with getting Clive going, especially on Facebook. I mean, I think that Clive kind of did Twitter on his own, or mostly did Twitter on his own previously, but now you know, with Alex's help, he's on Facebook and DeviantArt and what is that picture one?
Tumblr. Yeah, he's got a Tumblr, he's got an Instagram, he's got a DeviantArt, he's got Facebook, and you know, I wouldn't be surprised if he came up with MySpace.
Yeah.
So Alex. Actually, his name is Alex Villaseñor, but on Facebook he goes by Alex Gasbrow. Really, really cool that he helps Clive with all this stuff. He's a really amazing guy. He's pretty accessible. He loves feedback, and you know, I really love trading messages with him. He's a really cool guy. I'm really happy that he helped Clive with this, because if there's something that in today's world artists need to do is stay in touch with their fans. And, you know, I mean, some people might argue against it. They might say that, well, artists, you know, are better off left inside their little creative bubble with their creative process and not disturbed. But I think that for some artists that they require nourishment from their fans and encouragement, and you know, I think that can be a positive thing if it's done right. I mean, if they're not like some writers who are constantly on Twitter, or you know, but it depends. I mean, some people can be responsible; they can do that stuff. I mean, geez, Neil Gaiman is a prolific author, and he practically lives on Twitter.
Yeah, he retweets so much stuff.
He lives on Twitter and what's the name of that thing? Kickstarter and Indiegogo. So he's always like helping out people promote their projects and stuff.
Yeah, he helped out Occupy Midian quite a bit.
Yeah. And you got people who constantly, do stuff like that, like go on Twitter, go on Facebook.
Well, and I think that Clive felt bad about not going to these events. Yeah, and he couldn't be there to do signings and help introduce Nightbreed and stuff like that. And I think he feels bad that he feels like even though people have been really understanding about it, I think he still kind of felt like he let people down and he's become more than accessible, thanks to Alex and all this social media that he's doing.
He certainly has. I mean, but then people need to realize that Clive Barker, he said it himself on his Facebook. I mean, he did something once. He said since January that he'd left the house like 3 times.
Yeah.
And this was written like back in November or December. It was like he's still like very, very occupied with his health and his work. And one of the times that he went out was for the Beverly Hills New Beverly Cinema screening. And then, I don't know which were the other 2. Oh, I guess one of them was for the Abrad 3 signing.
No, that was in 2011.
That was before his coma.
And then there was the Halloween Masquerade Ball.
Oh, yeah, with Miss Kitty, Yeah,
so,
what do we need to talk about?
So he's been pretty accessible via social media. I mean, I think in the olden days it was, you send them a letter to their P.O. box.
Yeah, but then he made an announcement saying, I apologize, but I'm not going to be able to reply anymore to, like, letters. And I was pretty disappointed at the time because I had just had this letter that I wrote, and I sent it to our friend Maureen, and she actually gave it to him by hand at a signing. And I was like, well, I really wrote him a really, letter from the heart. And I was like, hey, Clive, you made me fall in love with the English language, and, your work has really shaped me. And then, like, a few days later, that popped up on Clive Barker Info.
Oh, really?
It's like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to reply to any more letters starting today, so please, And I was like, oh, man, that was like the worst timing ever.
Yeah.
So I was hoping to get a reply from him, but, that didn't happen. But then, he got on Tumblr and Twitter and all that stuff. And from Twitter, I mean, I can say that hundreds of fans have been able to talk to him on Twitter. Since
if you catch him at the right time.
Yeah, if you catch him at the right time. He'll just go like, you just pop in and say, hey, Clive, it's me, and you love your work. And sometimes he'll get a tweet back saying, hey, thanks, I'm following you. So it's like, wow. And people go like, wow, that's amazing.
If it's like midnight or 11 p.m. on, Pacific time, you can catch him sometimes when he's online. Yeah, I remember a particular conversation that I had with him once. This was back in the day when you remember the Scarlet Gospels was supposed to be a collection of short stories. Yeah. And then the short stories, he was writing one which is going to be called Grail, which is going to be the one with Jesus Christ and Jesus' life and Jesus in the cross and, apparently, Clive says that this story will completely revise the written story of Christ. And anyway, so he was asking stuff. This was back when, Mel Gibson's movie. He was talking about Mel Gibson's movie, The Passion of the Christ. And he was like, well, hey, does anybody know more about, this story that they used to make the movie? And I was like, yeah, actually, those are the visions of a nun that were written. There was a French nun, and these were the visions that she wrote, and that's where they based this script on, the whole thing with Christ being whipped and all that. And he was like, oh, that's really interesting. And then I sent him a link, and he was like, oh, thanks. This will be, I'm adding this to the materials for the research. And I was like, oh, cool. So, yeah. And then, that was cool. We traded a few DMs on Twitter about it. And that's when I found out that he was writing this story called Grail, And I hope I'm not breaching any trust by saying this, but I'm just talking about what we did talk about publicly on public tweets. Well, and I wonder if that got kind of absorbed into the short story that's into the novel of Scarlet Gospel.
I don't think so. I think it's a standalone story. Grail.
And, well, if that's true, then that one would have found its way into Black is the Devil's Rainbow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. We are on. So we talked about Clive and social media. The next thing was Zombies versus Gladiators, which was really only an announcement that Clive was going to be rewriting the script for that for Amazon.com's movie studio, which I think for a lot of us that was the first time we ever learned that they even had a movie studio.
Yeah. In fact, I think when we were talking about that, breaking that, well, we didn't break the news, but we were talking about that piece of news in the podcast. I actually discovered shortly before the episode that there was a previous script for Gladiators versus Zombies floating around on an actual Amazon website. Yeah. And, I got it, and it's like, I haven't really read it. I just took a look at it, but I think it was like, I hope this is not spoiling anything, because I'm sure Clive Barker will change the ending. But the ending, I think, involved like the Romans putting tears in arrows, and that would kill the zombies or something like that. At least that's what I read.
Well, I'm sure that you know what it was like when he rewrote The Mummy. It's going to be its own completely different thing.
Yeah.
Just maybe, maybe it'll have the same title. Who knows? But yeah, and I think there was some misconception that he was going to direct that movie, and I think someone reported it wrongly that way, and got a lot of people's hopes up that he was going. Clive is finally coming back to direct, and this is what he's directing, and it's like, no, he's not directing that. He's writing it.
Yeah. Actually, I just found the link that I had saved. There is actually a website called ZVG, Zombies vs. Gladiators, Michael's Original Draft, and it's from studios.amazon.com/script/3578. So you can actually go there. There is a script in rich text format, and there are trailers. There are trailers done with, like Roman things, like images, and it's a trailer just done with images. Yeah. But so I don't know what's coming out of this. Personally, kind of like I think trailer. Personally, I think that the title is kind of silly. Yeah. Zombies versus Gladiators. I mean, they could come up with a better sounding title. Yeah. I don't know. It just seems like lazy title. Like, hey, it's Zombies versus Gladiators, just like it was Freddy versus Jason. I'm not sure about that, but hey, let's see what happens. This might be something that will go somewhere, or it might be something that we might discussing a couple of years from now, saying, hey, another project that went nowhere was Clive, Clive's treatment. So let's see what happens. I don't know. At this point, I think Clive's energies are better used, and probably they're enough just to work on Aberrat.
But we don't really know what his plans are for that either. But I'm just gonna wait and see. I don't really have an opinion on it. Yeah,
I guess. So that's it for Zombies versus Gladiators. All we have is the Hollywood Reporter news that came out back in May of 2012 or June. So the only thing they said is horror meister Clive Barker has been tapped to rewrite Zombies vs. Gladiators, an action horror movie being developed by Amazon Studios, the unit of Amazon.com that was launched in 2010 to use audience feedback in the development of movie and TV scripts. Set in ancient Rome, Zombies vs. Gladiators story begins when a shaman who is about to die in the Colosseum casts a spell that unleashes the world's first zombies. It's up to Gladiator to stop the spread of the zombie horde and save Rome. So that's the premise of the movie, I think.
Yeah. Our next thing is there have been productions of Clive's of Clive's works, probably more than we've seen at a time before. So History of the Devil has been done in a few places. And actually, most recently, there's going to be one in March of this year, of 2013, in Kentucky, at the Alley Theater in Louisville, Kentucky, March 23rd.
The History of the Devil, one of my favorite, my favorite Clive
That's
Barker
a great
theater
play. I would love to go see that. And I actually have a friend that lives in Louisville, Kentucky. I mean, if I had any money, right now I'd probably go visit him and go see it. But
yeah.
So that's that one.
Yeah.
History of the Devil, The Life of Death, which is a short story that, you fans all know, but that's a short story from the Books of Blood that was, and it was earlier this year, adapted to the stage by a theater company. And same with The Departed.
Was that the one? Was that the one that they put on Kickstarter?
Yeah, I think so. I think that Life of Death was that in Chicago.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one they put on. It was either Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Yeah. I think it was Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were a few $1,000s short, and then, I'm sure that the last few days they did everything, and then we also posted that on Occupy Midian. Yeah. And then, boom! They got the thousands of dollars that they needed to get the play going, which was great.
Yeah, and then another one, The Departed, which is also Hermione and the Moon. That's a short story that we talked about recently in one of our rare stories episodes. But that was adapted into a stage play, which is really interesting because it's a Clive Barker story that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah, it was adapted by Michael Mitchell, and they did a stage reading of it at Scarefest, right? Yeah. So they even put the Michael Mitchell's adaptation available as a PDF. I think it's on Revelations.
So Scarefest was in Kentucky, and that was where Clive Barker was supposed to go. So that's really interesting because then now we've got The History of the Devil is also being done in Kentucky. I wonder if it's the same people. There's something in the water in Kentucky.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Hey, there's a lot of Kentucky Clive Barker fans. Lucky guys.
So then just a few other little things. We talked a little bit about his Miss Kitty's Halloween ball that Clive Barker hosted at. Neither one of us were there.
26th of October, we saw pictures on Facebook. They were posted by something brothers who did the event. I forgot the names of those guys.
I don't remember either. So I'm sure if you like gigantic Halloween parties, I'm sure that was awesome.
Yeah, they did like a costume, the masquerade ball, which the winner was selected by Clive, I think. Or he was part of the jury. So that was 26 October 2012. So, it must have been a crazy party.
Yeah. Yep. Then Rock Love Jewelry. So they've got 3 pieces of jewelry that are, in shapes of Clive Barker's designs. And then you can buy.
I just remember the name of the guys who promoted the event, Miss Kitty's Ball. It was the Boulay brothers. Okay. I was just trying to get. Yeah, Rock Love. I mean, it's beautiful. It's like 3 designs. One of them is like a spiral. The other is like a sun. Yeah. And they're really good looking. So, and there's going to be a Clive Barker store.
Yes. Yep. That was something that Alex had announced, that there's going to be a Clive Barker store. And you had already kind of mentioned that there's already previously a Seraphim store, but the Clive Barker store, probably more people will, know about that because it's got his name on it.
Yeah. It's going to be in the realclivebarker.com. Yeah. So I don't think the site is active yet, but you can try it.
Yeah.
And the good thing is that we saw a picture of it on Facebook. I'm guessing of the promotional design of the website, or at least something, which had like Clive Barker store, and then it was like prints, some books, and then apparel. And I'm wondering, what are they going to put there? Maybe something new for you to buy and wear. Yeah. Another T-shirt.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
You remember when they came out with these things that had like the skulls, the little black and white skull designs? Yeah. They did some. Was it a?
What's the name of that?
It's
that store. I have it on. I bought I got the Hellraiser
tie.
Mouse pad, and I got the tie and a T-shirt. But
I remember that came out in 2011. I think.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it. Oh, Zazzle.com.
Right, Zazzle. Yeah. Okay,
And the Clive
Zazzle
Barker,
thing.
they still have a Clive Barker section, but there's nothing in it now.
Okay, I guess it was just a one-time thing, probably a limited time offer.
Yep.
So, it's interesting. Rock Love. I might get something like that for my fiance.
Yeah, those look really nice. And then
I got my fiance one of those bracelets for the followers of the Pandorix thing, the Barbie Wild Pandoric bracelet.
Oh yeah,
I got one of those. Yeah,
that's
it
pretty
really
cool.
Looks cute. Yeah.
So then our next thing, well, and then obviously, something that kind of also spawned from that Mad Monster party was that and this isn't really on our list, but that the followers of the Pandorix and the Pyramid Gallery, they got to meet Nicholas Vince and Barbie Wilde and Simon Bamford.
Yeah, they started out the website of Followers of the Pandorix, and then they started creating these boxes. Like Pandorix are basically Hellraiser style boxes that they created, and Eric Gross designed a few of them. They did one for Barbie Wilde. I don't think it's for sale yet. They're still like coming up with the actual. They still have they're still in prototype stage, but they're really good looking. So just keep Google it for Followers of the Pandorix. See if you can find them on Facebook and the website.
You put dashes in between all the words, right?
Yeah, followers-of-the-pandorix.com or something like that. And it's really cool. I mean, they're doing one for Nicholas Vince too. They're still in design stage for that.
And they have stories that go along with the boxes, and it's a neat idea and kind of a nice homage to Hellraiser.
Yeah, and of course there's going to be book with the boxes in there and stuff. It's going to be really cool. So just stay tuned for that Followers of the Pandorix thing, and whenever we have more news about it, we'll just talk about it here. Maybe we can get someone to come into an episode and tell us more about it.
And so our last thing, before we get into the questions from online. The Facebook Q&A #1 was in 2012, and there's the very first time Clive Barker did a question and answer thing online. Besides, Phil and Sarah's one that from 2006 that you and I kind of had, had done questions on, but yeah. So this was a Q&A on Facebook. It was done on Clive Barker's wall, and we kind of talked a little bit about this last time. About. About it's a little chaotic because everybody's posting stuff at once and people are I'm trying to find the ones that he answered, I'm looking for ones that have comments in them, and then you open it up and it's like, oh, some other guy commented on that.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I would say is that for a Q&A, only thing that might help to make sense of it would be a little moderation.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I mean, usually questions are sent and then they're selected a few and then they're asked.
I think
in this case it's like
because Clive Barker is verbally answering the questions and Alex is trying to type them as fast as he can. So they might want to have a third person that's going in there and moderating a little bit, like you say.
Yeah, it's like Facebook is strange in that way because it's not very friendly interface for the Q&A like this.
No.
I mean, you probably need to copy paste them somewhere. I don't know. I mean, that would really help if you copy paste them to somewhere. Like the questions which are being answered would be separate and posted in some place where they would be more visible. Otherwise, it's just going to be a bunch of things inside a bag, and a few of them have been replied, but they're all mixed in together with the unreplied ones. So it's kind of looking for, like you said, like you're going through it and it's like, oh, there's a question with comments. I wonder if that's Clive Barker. You click on it and it's like someone else saying, yeah, this question right here, man. I want to know this too. And it's like someone else is going like, yeah, answer this question. Or someone is like, just liking it or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, which one is it? And then you go and you find, oh, here it is. So the only thing that's missing, this is amazing, that they're taking the time to do Q&As on Facebook. Usually, the thing is, they announce them ahead of time, few days or something. Then the day comes and it goes like, okay, just post your questions to the wall, and everybody starts, bombarding it with questions everywhere. And then it's like, okay, now we got 1 hour to reply. I'm going to type as many as I can. So that's what they do. And, it's great that the people are getting their questions answered directly by Clive Barker. It's just that the only thing that would help would be a little moderation in how these questions are, replied and posted. Because it's,
and if it was in a place
chaotic.
where people had to register, and, then you wouldn't have the jerky, stupid comments either. If somebody's asking an idiotic question or being rude, then they could get kicked off.
Yeah. I mean, so far I think I've only noticed one person who was like, hey, I posted my question, you didn't answer. What a waste of time. But it was like, that person, obviously does not understand how this Q&A is being done.
I mean, it's kind of in a way, it's kind of a lottery because there's so many people on there asking questions. And
otherwise, Clive would be spending like the whole afternoon just answering questions to people.
And he has to look at the questions and see if there's which ones are the most interesting, which ones are things he's already answered.
Yes, a lot of them are like questions that it's like, hey, when is the Weave World movie coming out? Like, oh, God. Where do you even start on that one? How do you even start on that one, I mean...
And he did, to his credit, he answered a lot of questions like that we already knew he was going to say, look, I don't have any answers for that. If somebody wants to do it, I'm open to it.
Yeah. Anyway, it was fun. 2 Q&As this year. Well, one of them was in January. It was on New Year's Day. It was like on January 1st. So we'll count that one in as 2012, I guess. That was great. That was great. Hoping to see more of that in the future.
So we kind of went out on the internet and said, hey, what were your highlights for 2012? And we got some responses from people. The first one on Facebook here is Andrew Kopp. He said, not having to shave my head, although I ended up doing it a couple of months later anyway. So...
Oh, that guy who did the pledge that if we got to 5,000 signatures on Occupy Midian's petition, if we didn't get to 5,000 by June 1st of 2012, he would shave his head. And Colin Lakativa was doing the same thing.
Yeah. And that was all, that June 1st deadline wasn't really a hard deadline that we had set. It was kind of something that, members of like Colin had kind of put together and set it as a deadline, but it didn't really mean anything as far as like whether the movie was going to be made or not.
Yeah. Still, it was great because when we reached 5,000 signatures on the petition, those 5,000 signatures went under Russell's arm to Los Angeles, and he managed to get his foot in the door.
No, I mean, and it helped a lot. And then, from that, we had the Twitter blitz from Christine and from Colin and Jonathan McAvoy.
Yeah. So that was great.
Yep.
Claudia Glazard says, Cabal cut viewing in Manchester, UK! Exclamation points. Yeah, I guess that would be a highlight for any Nightbreed fan.
Anybody that got to see it. And Roger, who has been on this podcast with us before, said, Occupy Midian, a force to be reckoned with. So, Roger, of course, one of the founding members of Occupy Midian.
Yeah.
Joe Skeen, who runs the Clive Barker A Spiral of Friends group
on Facebook,
says, well, Occupy Midian, of course, was/is huge. Clive's health was/is a big concern. Him finding new life in general and in his work. And working on Aberrat 4, plans for the Art 3, him being more active on Facebook has been kind of cool, being able to interact with him here and on Twitter. And did I mention that there's been something going on with Nightbreed? Those are the first things that come to mind. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Daniel Hilton Simonson says, absolutely, the Mad Monster Party in Charlotte, but that is totally obvious. Like the saying that the best part of the ocean is how very much water there is. Another of my favorite Barker happenings of 2012 is his increased exposure and accessibility on social media sites like here on Facebook or DeviantArt or Instagram or Twitter, though I guess the big Twitter push started back in 2011. also, and I'm not saying this to merely stroke your ego, my discovery of the Clive Barker podcast.
Yay!
Through this very group was one of my personal Barker highlights. Definitely on my top 5 of 6 favorite podcasts.
Wow, well, thank you.
Well, thanks, Daniel. Hey, it's been fun doing it. This has probably been one of the funniest, most entertaining episodes I'm doing so far. Maybe because the last couple I was kind of sick or, somewhere else. But today it's a good episode. Today's a good episode.
Yeah. Well, and we don't actually, there are a lot of people that listen, but we really don't get feedback that often. So, we really appreciate it.
Give us a review on iTunes.
Yeah. Yep. And then Stephen Cook says Clive's health improving. And I think definitely we're all happy to see that. Yeah. To see him, on the mend and not just Absolutely. Because we want him to get his work done, but, I kind of feel like he's, become kind of a friend. Yeah. I mean, he definitely has this, when you're a Clive Barker fan, it's like whenever how can I explain this? It's not, you care for Clive Barker as well, not just his work, because he's such an accessible guy and he shares so much of his own inner life with his fans, which a lot of writers do not. I mean, a lot of writers are very, I don't want to say very professional because that's not a professional thing. It's like a lot of writers, they prefer to have their work speak for themselves. Yeah. And Clive Barker, you can't shut him up. He's going to tell you. He's going to show you pictures of himself naked. He's going to. There's no separation tell you, hey, of his work and his personal life. I mean, not really. Yeah. His work life and his personal life are all sort of blended together.
Yeah, one moment he can be talking about his dream last night. He can be putting up a picture of himself as a 20-year-old, like wearing like makeup in a theater play, wearing completely, nothing. Or he can be like telling you things like today. He said something on Facebook which was really moving, which he was talking about his first boyfriend when he was like 14. And he knew he was gay, and he was talking about how his family, some members of his family, were not very supportive of his being gay, and they kind of like repressed him a bit, and then he found this boy. So he did that. He just posted that status update about one of his first loves, I guess, when he was a teenager. So there you go. He talks about his life all the time, and that makes you care for him, not just as an artist, but as a person as well.
Yeah, well, and me having met him, I've met him so many times because I've flown out to book signings and stuff. And the one Texas Frightmare weekend was the one where I really started to kind of feel concerned for him. His head was a little crooked and Mark says that he falls asleep riding in his chair, and that was where he gets most of his sleep was sitting up and trying to get just riding.
Mm-hmm. I also remember an interview I think he did for Phil and Sarah where he talked about having some problems with chronic pain on his shoulder and on his leg. So that's also one of the things that makes him get a little crooked and bent.
Yeah. So I'd like to see him take some time to kind of really get better, and rest. Yeah.
And more feedback from our friends on Facebook. There's Brad Wren, who says his highlight for him was Mad Monster Party for sure, seeing the Cabal cut, or as I call it, the real Nightbreed, for the first time, and geeking out with Mark Miller and Russell Charrington.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, because they were there.
Yep.
Philippe O'Neill from for Facebook says, seeing the Cabal cut at the Weekend of Horrors convention in Germany and having a small chat with Simon Banford.
That's cool.
Yeah, we had a little chat with Simon Banford.
Yeah, Simon is super nice, and he's as nice in person as he was on the podcast. It was really cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Paul Alexander said, seeing the Cabal cut for the first time, making new and awesome friends through the shared love of this amazing film. Also listening to my first ever podcast, which was darn good, well done, and thank you to especially Ryan and Jose. So thank you, Paul Alexander.
Thanks.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, thanks, man. Ashley McBride says, his Facebook page, Clive Barker's, of course, it is great to hear from him almost every day. Yeah, and they do, I think they tend to post like 3 or 4 things every day on Facebook, which is pretty cool because, you get a little bit of Clive every day.
Yeah, sometimes it's direct quotes from him. Sometimes it's like just a picture of some, of something or of some past work or related work or, like today there were pictures of a fan's tattoos of Cenobites.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one from Barbie, the female Cenobites.
Yeah, and then I think
awesome.
Clive also posted it after she did.
Yeah, probably. So, and on Twitter, our friend Serena from the Fifth Dominion Forum, she says, having Clive on Facebook again, so...
Yeah, so there's a lot of really positive feedback from that. So I think people are really appreciative that there's a place where they can look at see things and hear from Clive and talk to him.
Yeah, I for me I would have to say highlights of 2012 for the Clive Barker podcast in my experience was the episode 6 interview with Simon Banford, was the creation of the Occupy Midian and seeing it grow. Also, special interview we did with Nick Vince in April 2012, and interview with Russell Charrington on May 2012, and then of course our interview with Barbie Wilde. That was that was great. That was great.
And I think for me it is the Occupy Midian, but it's also going to Mad Monster Party and Monster Mania. Although those are very, very expensive things to go to, when you're getting $25 an autograph from every single person there, and when you plan out these things, you're like, okay, that person's there, well, that person's in Predator, so I can bring that, DVD or Blu-ray or whatever. And after a while, you add it all up, and it's like, well, that's $1,200 worth of autographs if I really do all that.
Oh. Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but those were really fun. And, I don't know. I never really planned, after I did one, to see Clive in Texas Frightmare Weekend, I never really planned to go to another one of those because they're so expensive. But it just sort of worked out, with the Cabal cut and everything. And like, okay, I'm going to do this one more time. And then Monster Mania came, and it was like the Hellraiser reunion, and Clive was going to be there, and I thought, all right, I'll do one more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's kind of a highlight.
Yeah, that sounds really, really good. We had Nicholas Vince twice on the podcast. We might have Barbie Wilde for a second one. For a second episode, if everything goes well. We might have Tim Dry. I don't know. If the second one with Barbie Wilde goes through, we might just have Tim Dry, who has been in shock with Barbie Wilde. Yeah. And he's also been in Extro and Star Wars Return of... it's a third one. Which one is it? Jedi. Oh, yeah. Return of the Jedi, right. So, I don't know. Just stay tuned. Let's see who we can get as guests on the podcast on 2013.
Yeah. And
we'll try to do it.
Yeah, we've talked to also Hugh Ross. It's really the time. It's the timing is the hard part. And all of these people are happy and willing to do it. It's just, trying to get it to work for everybody.
Yeah. FearNet hosted Salome and the Forbidden on their website, so the people could stream and watch it. Nightbreed came on the front cover of Rue Morgue's, Rue Morgue magazine in December.
True. Yeah, and that kind of falls into Occupy Midian, news, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this was the 30th episode of the Clive Barker podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Wow, 30 episodes. Yeah. It's like it was yesterday that we, this quirky guy from Alaska said, "Hey, do you want to do a podcast?"
Yeah.
Like, we should do a podcast. And I'm like, yeah, sure. He says, thinking it's going to be a one-time thing. And, 1 year later, we're doing the 30th episode. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and
thanks for everything,
yeah,
Ryan.
Well, thank you. It's been fun, and we've got a whole other year planned out of episodes, so we aren't going anywhere.
Yes, we're gonna talk about novels. We're gonna try to get people to get interviewed.
Yeah,
it's going to be really cool. We're going to talk about the Hellraiser movies. We're going to talk about that's a whole can of worms right there.
Yeah, and that's going to be a long series talking about the Hellraiser movies.
Yeah. The Hellraiser podcast has done that.
Yeah, they did.
I think,
and that's why we didn't do it last year, because we didn't want to kind of step on them and do the same exact thing that they're doing.
Yeah, we might try our hand at doing some kind of like commentary track for some movie or something. Let's see what we can come up with. The sky's the limit. If you guys got any suggestions about what you would like to see discussed, also send some feedback, give us a review on iTunes, and get in touch with us.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
All right, well, you can catch us on the web at www.clivebarkercast.com. Leave us a review on iTunes. We have a Facebook page, and join the Occupy Midian group if you haven't. On Twitter, we're at BarkerCast and at Occupy Midian. And the forum is www.timewinds.com/Clive/forum, and the official page for Occupy Midian is www.occupymidian.com. Thank you.
Caesar is dead, my lord. The beastly creature's army have charged the Senate's house. They have charged the Senate's house, my lord. Gather the men. Tell them they must endure, even if it means they're going to be burned, bound and beaten. My men must be more lovely now than ever before. And what of the mindless monsters, my lord? What of them? We will stay here and hold them off. We will buy you and the others time. Our names will live forever. For we live in the mightiest city on earth.